Arunachala Shiva.
Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi, who attained Sahaja Samadhi at the young age of 17, was the living example of Stithaprajna described in Bhagavad Gita. Dr. T.M.P. Mahadevan, who was professor of philosophy at Madras University, went on a mission to England to give lectures on Indian philosophy and Bhagavad Gita. The ardent seekers there asked him about the state of Stithaprajna described in Bhagavad Gita. Is it a mere theoretical explanation, or is it possible to attain this state in practical life? Was their doubt. If you want to see a Stithaprajna in flesh and blood, go to Tiruvannamalai in South India. He is none other than Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi, proclaimed Sri T.M.P. It was in the 40s of 20th century. Ramana Maharshi attained this highest stage of Indian philosophy without doing any kind of usual sadhana or following instructions from a guru. It dawned upon him all of a sudden as he was a lad of 17. Ramana Maharshi was an ordinary boy of a middle-class Brahmin family of Tiruchuri village in Madurai, Tamil Nadu. His father, Sundaram Iyer, was an uncertified village pleader, and mother, Alagammal, a pious housewife. The boy was named Venkatraman. He had an elder brother, Nagaswami, and a younger brother, Nagasundaram. Venkataraman was just an ordinary boy. There was no indication of his becoming a spiritual master. He was an average student at school. His interest was in sports, wrestling, swimming, and football. The only specialty during this period was his abnormal sleep. He used to sleep for hours, totally unconscious of the outer world. Nothing could wake him up from this slumber. As a schoolboy, he was not familiar with any spiritual literature. His father died when Venkataraman was at the age of 12. He had to go to his uncle's house at Madurai for his high school education. The first glimpse of spiritual awakening took place in Venkataraman when a relative of his visited his house. The boy asked the relative whence he was coming, and the relative told that he was coming from Arunachala. The word Arunachala kindled a spark in Venkataraman, and he exclaimed whether it was possible for him to go there. The boy thought that it was a heavenly abode. The relative put out his curiosity by saying that Arunachala is Tiruvannamalai itself. The second impulse of spirituality came to Venkataraman from Periya Puranam, the lives of 63 Tamil Shaivite saints. He was overwhelmed with ecstatic wonder by reading that book and wished to attain that state of spiritual fervor of those saints. A meditative mood began to awaken in Venkataraman. It was a kind of awareness of bliss beyond the senses and mind. He was able to experience this awareness whenever he visited the Meenakshi temple at Madurai. Normally, by constant sadhana, this awareness will lead to Sahaja Samadhi, where the awareness will be constant, unaffected by the normal activities of life. It is a rare phenomenon, but in the case of Venkataraman, it happened without doing any sadhana in the usual manner. It all happened all of a sudden. A sudden fear of death overtook Venkataraman in his 17th year. He was sitting alone in his uncle's house. Venkataraman had no ailments. His health was perfect. Suddenly, he felt that he was going to die. It did not occur to him to call the elders or consult a doctor. He thought of solving the problem himself there itself. Venkataraman decided to face death. His thoughts became introverted. He lay down on the floor. The symptoms of death took over his body. The body became a corpse. But in his innermost core, he could experience a reality untouched by outward changes. He could experience that the real I is not the body nor the mind. It is beyond that. This experience lasted for nearly half an hour. Then life current began to flow through the body. Normalcy was regained. Venkataraman got the awareness that the real I is beyond death. It is actually the universal deathless self. After this death experience, there occurred a total change in Venkataraman's attitude. He lost his interest in sports and games, so also in friendship. Consumption of food and going to school became mechanical. He preferred to sit alone and meditate. The word Arunachalam that he heard from a relative began to throb in his heart. As days passed, the urge to reach Arunachalam became strong in Venkataraman. Under the pretext of a special class, Venkataraman decided to leave home and go to Tiruvannamalai. His elder brother asked Venkataraman to take ₹5 and pay his college fees. He took only ₹3, calculating that that much amount would be sufficient for the train ticket. Venkataraman wrote a letter to his brother saying that he was leaving home to reach his father at his errand. Further, he mentioned in the letter, this was embarking for a holy purpose and hence no money need be spent for searching this. he placed the remaining rupees 2 along with the letter, stating that the brother's college fees was not paid. This letter was characteristic of the spiritual state of Venkataraman. It began with I. Then I was substituted by this. Towards the end of the letter, the personality was fully lost. There was only a single line in the space of the signature. After a tedious journey, Venkataraman reached Tiruvannamalai on September 1896. He entered the temple of Arunachala. He entered the temple of Arunachaleshwara. Though it was not the time of darshan, all the doors of the temple were fully opened. He stood therefore in the temple of Arunachaleshwara. Though it was not the time for darshan, all the doors of the temple were fully opened. He stood before the idol and exclaimed, "O Father, I have at last reached thy abode." Venkataraman's journey came to an end. He went out of the temple and wandered through the streets. Someone offered to shave his head. He had a tuft of hair symbolizing the Brahmin caste. He ordered to have a full shave, removing the tuft. He took out the sacred thread from his body and threw it along with the balance of rupees 3 into the nearby pond. He tore the dhoti and took out a piece and wore it as a loin cloth. Days together, Venkataraman sat absorbed in meditation at various precincts of the temple. To avoid the harms done by mischievous children, Venkataraman sought refuge in an underground vault called Padala Lingam in the 1,000-pillared hall of the temple. It was a dark and damp place occupied by vermins, ants, and mosquitoes. Venkataraman's thighs were wounded by the attack of these. Blood and pus began to come out of these wounds. Unmindful of all these torments, Venkataraman remained absorbed in this bliss of meditation. There was no trace of body consciousness. One Venkadasala Mudali happened to see the pitiable condition of the young Swami and lifted him bodily out of Padala Lingam and made him sit at the shrine of Lord Subramanya. He did not partake the food materials offered by devotees. One Mauni Swami, who was in charge of the shrine of Goddess Uma, offered a tumbler of mixture of milk, water, turmeric powder and sugar. Sometimes Brahmana Swami, as he was referred to by the people there, just gulped it without looking to its taste. Some devotees like Uddandi Nayanar and Annamalai Tambiran, who recognized the greatness of the young Swami, took him to different places in and around the temple and offered protection from mischievous children and curious sightseers. Venkataraman's mother was desperate at the missing of her son. She asked her brothers-in-law to find out her son. They searched everywhere, but all their efforts were in vain. One of the brother-in-law died by this time, and the relatives got some information from a person who came there to attend the funeral that Venkataraman was at Tiruvannamalai and had become a revered Swami. Nelliyappa Iyer, the brother-in-law, at once set out for Tiruvannamalai to verify the news. Venkataraman was continuing his meditation in a mango grove at Tiruvannamalai, and the owner of the place did not allow anyone to disturb the Swami without the permission of Palari Swami. Nelliyappa Iyer wrote his name and place on a piece of paper and sent to the Swami. He was permitted to see Venkataraman. Though Nelliyappa Iyer requested Venkataraman to come back to the native place, where he would be provided a place to continue his spiritual life, Venkataraman turned a deaf ear towards him. Later, Mother Alagammal came to Venkataraman with her eldest son. Seeing the unkempt condition of her son, she wept profusely and implored Venkataraman to accompany her. Venkataraman kept quiet and did not pay heed to the request and lamentations of the mother. Out of the persistent request of the devotees to write something to the weeping mother, Venkataraman wrote on a paper, "Everybody is acting according to one's prarabdha, and the best course is to remain silent." Everything in life occurs as per prarabdha, Bhagavan used to say. All the actions that the body is to perform are already decided upon at the time of its birth. The only freedom you have is whether or not to identify yourself with the body. If everything is according to prarabdha, where is the freedom for one for spiritual sadhana? One devotee asked. To that question, Bhagavan's reply was, that which is called destiny preventing sadhana exists only to the externalized and not to the introverted mind. The very thought of such obstacles is the greatest impediment. In the case of the jnani, the rise or existence of the ego is only apparent. He enjoys his unbroken transcendental bliss in spite of such apparent rise or existence of the ego, keeping his attention always on the source. When Venkataraman, then known as Brahmana Swami, shifted his residence to Virupaksha cave, began to write out explanations or instructions to the devotees. Slowly, he resumed speech. Still, his real teaching was through silence. In his presence, through his look and silence, doubts of seekers used to melt away, and they could experience indescribable peace. It is at this time the renowned Sanskrit scholar and poet Kavyakantha Ganapati Muni happened to visit the young Swami. Kavyakantha had mastered all the Vedas and Shastras and had done japa and yoga in abundance. Still, he did not get peace. He was wandering hither and thither in search of a marga to attain peace. He heard of this young Brahmana Swami and approached him. Kavyakantha informed Brahmana Swami about his condition. The Swami asked Kavyakantha to point out who is doing japa and other sadhanas. If you analyze introvertedly, you will understand that it is the ego. And if you find out the source of I, you will be able to abide in peace. This was a revelation to Kavyagandha, which he could not get from any other source. He was overwhelmed with joy and peace. He had a band of followers. He proclaimed to his disciples as well as the devotees of Brahmana Swami. From today onwards, this Brahmana Swami will be known as Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. Sri Maharshi had already explained to Sri Sivapragasham Pillai to find out who am I. It was not a bookish knowledge. It was the real experience of Bhagavan even at the age of 17, when he had the experience of death. It was not a thought analysis. It is a process of internal enquiry by introverting the mind to its source. Maharshi attained this highest spiritual state maybe as per his sadhana done in his previous lives. All sadhana lasted for just 20 minutes, Bhagavan used to say. Throughout his life, till the end, he was in Sagaja state. It is otherwise termed as Stithaprajna state. In later years, when Bhagavan happened to go through Yoga Vasishta, Kaivalya Navanita, Ribhu Gita, etc., he found the states described in these texts were his experience. Even after realization, one can do the duties of the world in an effective manner with a detached outlook, Bhagavan used to say. Bhagavan himself was an example of how a Stithaprajna would engage himself in the day-to-day activities without ego sense and in all its perfection. Bhagavan would enter the kitchen in the early hours for cutting vegetables. He would engage himself in bookbinding, correcting the proof for printing, making spoons out of coconut shells, etc. His every action would be meticulously correct. It is the intrusion of the ego that creates all problems and imperfections in work. If people can engage in their day-to-day duties without the sense of ego and without selfish motive, the execution of work would be more effective. There will be no rivalry and clash, and the problems of the world to a great extent could be solved. Sri Maharshi was extremely simple. There was no sign of a superhuman spiritual personality. Everybody was equal to him. Royal personages, political leaders, saints and sages, scholars and poets would visit Sri Maharshi. And at the same time, poor ladies and woodcutters would approach him. He treated all of them equally. He took food with other devotees, and he was particular that every item of food was equally served to everyone. Whenever anybody tried to offer Bhagavan anything special, he discouraged it outright. Anything offered to him by devotees will be distributed among those present then and there. Not only human beings, monkeys, dogs, squirrels, birds and beasts moved freely with Sri Maharshi and enjoyed supreme peace that permeated in his presence. He could identify himself with every being and see the self in everything. If people do their work as a duty without the ego and without selfish motive, that will reflect in the quality of the work. In later years, Bhagavan's mother came to Bhagavan along with the younger son when the eldest son died prematurely. To them also, Bhagavan's attitude was without any attachment. In her old age, Bhagavan nursed the mother as a dutiful son and finally gave her moksha also. She was given the status of a saint and her body was interred and a samadhi mandapam was created over it. Subsequently, Bhagavan came to settle beside mother's samadhi and Ramanashramam was founded there. His remark on this was, "It was not of my own volition that I moved from Skandashrama. Something brought me here and I obeyed. It was not my decision, but that of the divine will." With regard to the samadhi of his mother, there is a clarification in Ramana Gita to the questions raised by Ganapati Shastri and other devotees about mukti of ladies. Since Jnana and mukti do not differ with the difference of sex, the body of a woman saint need not be burnt. Her body is the abode of God. Swarube vartamananam pakvanam yoshidamapi nivartatvat nishedasya hamsitvam naiva dushyati. Jivan mukta na dakhya syad tad deho ki suralayaha. In later years, a temple was constructed over the samadhi of Bhagavan's mother. When Bhagavan was in Skandashramam, Sri Narayana Guru visited him and was highly impressed seeing his Sahaja Nishtha. Both of them did not speak anything. They exchanged their looks. During the departure, Gurudevan asked the attendants to bring a piece of paper and pencil, and he wrote 5 slokas in Sanskrit about his impression regarding Sri Maharshi. It is known as Nirvana Panchaka. After returning to Kerala, Sri Narayana Guru composed another 5 slokas about Bhagavan's Nishtha and sent it to the ashram. It was named Municharya Panchaka. True, only a Jnani can distinguish another Jnani. The great Tamil poet Muruganar was a great devotee of Bhagavan and composed many poems on Bhagavan. He was instrumental in Bhagavan's writing Upadeshasaram. Many scholars like Yogi Ramaya, B.V. Narasimha Swami, the author of Bhagavan's biography, Vishwanatha Swami, Jagadisha Shastri, Devaraja Mudaliyar, who wrote Day by Day with Bhagavan, Lakshmana Sharma, the author of Mahayoga, Munagala Venkatarama Iyer, who compiled the talks, were closely associated with Bhagavan. Among the Western devotees, it was Paul Brendan who introduced Bhagavan and his teachings to the best through his book A Search in Secret India. Arthur Osborne, who was the editor of the ashram magazine Mountain Path, writes about his observation on Bhagavan. His face is like the face of water, always changing, yet always the same. Even those who have seen him only for a short time or only in a photograph recall him to their mind's eye more vividly than those they know well. It may be that the love, the grace, the wisdom, the deep understanding, the childlike innocence that shines from such a picture is a better starting point for meditation than any words. Ramana Maharshi, The Path of Self-Knowledge. A mother brings a child in and Bhagavan smiles to it more beautifully than a mother. Bhagavan used to entertain children and join them in their play. There is a speciality in Bhagavan's eyes. The luminous eyes could instill peace and strength. How can one describe those eyes? Asks Arthur Osborne. All the problems of the mind melt away by his look, and one is led to the calm reality of peace. There is no need of words. All the doubts get cleared in his benign peace. Get cleared in his benign presence. While dealing with the philosophical matters and answering questions, Bhagavan used a conversational style with wit and humor. There was no compulsion that the questioner should accept his views. The questioner was free to dispute until he gets convinced. Bhagavan never engaged himself in disputation. He tried to help the questioner to rise above from his own level of understanding. Spiritual instructions depended on the temperament and mental maturity of the individual. There was no mass instruction. By his association, a Christian becomes a better Christian and a Muslim becomes a better Muslim. Bhagavan accepted this grace of the Guru. According to him, Guru the grace of the Guru. According to him, Guru is a Jnani who sees no difference. The real Guru is the self within. All sadhana and meditation is to remove the false idea that the Guru is outside. Bhagavan never claimed that he was a Guru. According to him, everyone, including himself, is self only. He cannot see anyone as a disciple apart from him. Hence, the concept of Guru and Shishya had no relevance to him. God, Guru and self are synonyms, Bhagavan used to say. Even then, the grace of Bhagavan flowed through his look or by his silence as a guidance to many devotees. It was suited to the direct path of self-inquiry enunciated by Bhagavan. In many cases, Bhagavan gave guidance through dream. The silence in his presence was never inert. It was always vibrant with peace. The method of Upadesha resorted to by Bhagavan was that of Arunachala and Dakshinamurti through silence. Gurostu Maunam Vyakhyanam. Bhagavan spoke of Vichara Marga or self-enquiry, and there was a notion that he promoted only Jnana Marga. But Bhagavan gave guidance to the devotees according to their temperament, either through bhakti, jnana or karma. He prescribed love and devotion and the path of complete surrender to many devotees. He once told to Devaraja Mudaliya, "Your business is only to surrender and leave everything to me." To another devotee, he said, "Only keep quiet, Bhagavan will do the rest." Bhagavan advocated two methods, either to ask who am I or surrender to the Guru. Bhagavan gave importance to satsang as a sadhana. By satsang, he meant association with one who has realized. The effect of satsang, though not immediate, it will have its effect in due course. He compared it to a mother feeding a child while he was sleeping. Though the child did not have the idea of taking food, the nourishment had been done. Self-enquiry, according to Bhagavan, is the only means to realize the absolute being that we really are. The attempt to destroy the ego through other sadhanas is like the thief turning a policeman to catch the thief, that is himself. The purpose of self-enquiry is to focus the entire mind at its source. It is not a case of one eye searching for another eye. Maharshi's Gospel. Self-enquiry, according to Bhagavan, is not only a technique of meditation, it is a technique of living also. He reiterated that there is no need of renunciation of worldly life. If ego is erased, the things which seemed obstacles will turn to be instruments of sadhana. Bhagavan quoted the example of King Janaka, a realized soul who discharged the worldly duties in an effective manner without the intervention of ego. Regarding the attempt to change the social order, Bhagavan said, "You need not bother to change the social order. There is a higher force to govern the world, and it is his task to look after the world. First find out the truth behind yourself, and then you will be in a better position to understand the truth behind the world." Bhagavan asserted that the real heart is on the right side of the chest. It is the spiritual heart, quite different from the blood pumping heart, which is situated on the left side of the chest. The spiritual heart is the center and source of the ego and the abode of self. When asked about the authority regarding the location of the spiritual heart, he said that it was his own experience. Later, it was confirmed in a Malayalam commentary of Ayurvedic text Ashtanga Hridayam and Siddhopanishad. The biblical saying, "The wise man's heart is at his right hand, but a fool's heart is at his left," corroborates this view. Bhagavan referred to the common gesture of everybody pointing the finger to the right side of the chest when he utters I. That itself is an indication of the profound truth that the source of I is the self there. The exact location and nature of this spiritual heart is given in the appendix of Bhagavan's Saddarshana and Ramana Gita. Bhagavan did not encourage siddhis. It is a hindrance to the spiritual progress of the aspirant, he warned. In Ramana Gita, Bhagavan says other margas like japa, dhyana, breath control, etc. as helpful to prepare the mind for vichara marga or self-enquiry. Jabena vadha mandranam manaso nigraho bhavet. Bhagavan used to say that the grace of the Guru is like an ocean. If one comes with a cup, he will get only a cupful. The bigger the vessel, the more will he be able to carry. The technique of Bhagavan, the teaching of Bhagavan is meant for everybody without the restriction of caste, creed, religion or sex. Not only Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, Muslims, Jews, Parsis also came to Bhagavan and sought his guidance. He never asked anyone to change his religion. Because of his grace, people were able to understand their religion in a better way. Because self-enquiry is called Jnana Marga, there is a notion that only intellectuals can follow it. But actually, it is understanding the heart. It is not theoretical knowledge. It is the unlearned who are saved rather than those whose ego has not subsided despite their learning, says Bhagavan. Bhagavan never approved of outward exhibitions and ostentation such as Mauna Vrata, display of bhakti, etc. The real Mauna is in the heart, Bhagavan clarified. There is no use of giving up speech and resorting to writing to convey one's thoughts. Mauna is the cessation of thoughts. There is a misconception that a jnani has prarabdha. A realized soul has no sorts of karma such as prarabdha, sanchita and agami. When the ego is perished, who is there to enjoy these karmas? Bhagavan quoted the example of a husband having 3 wives to elucidate this fact. When the husband dies, what about widowhood? What about widowhood? Is it only for one wife or all the 3? He asked. As far as the jnani is concerned, he is one with the self. He is not at all conscious of the body. The activities of the body never affect his natural state of sahaja nishta. The body will have its course of prarabdha, but the jnani is totally detached to it. Jnana or realization is not a new thing to be achieved, Bhagavan pointed out. If it is to be achieved at a particular point, there is every chance of losing it. Jnana or the self is eternal and ever present. Bhagavan elucidated this by telling a story of 10 people crossing a river. After crossing the river and reaching the other bank of the river, they began to count one by one and found only 9 members. They were grief-stricken, seeing the loss of one of their companions. A sannyasi coming that way inquired them about the reason of their sorrow. They told the incident and the missing of the 10th person. The saint showed them that all the 10 members are there by touching each one. He pointed out their mistake, that at the time of counting, each one omitted himself and counted the others. The 10th person was already there. He was never lost. Similar is the case of the self. It is ever there, never lost nor achieved. Dr. T.M.P. Mahadevan observes, Sri Ramana's central teaching is self-enquiry. Instead of wanting to know this and that, seek to know the self. Ask, who am I? Self-enquiry ought to be the easiest of all tasks. But it seems to be the most difficult because we have become strangers to ourself. What one has to do is simple, to abide as the self. This is the ultimate truth. This is our eternal, natural, inherent state. Can a married man realize the self? Asked a devotee. And Bhagavan's reply was, certainly, it's a matter of fitness of mind. Married or unmarried, a man can realize the self because that is here and now. Bhagavan once remarked, a householder who does not claim that he is a householder is better than a sannyasin who claims that he is a sannyasi. According to Bhagavan, the world is a projection of mind. In deep sleep, there is no mind and there is no perception of the world. When one wakes up from sleep, the I thought along with other thoughts rises and the world is perceived. The mind is a bundle of thoughts and all the thoughts are woven round the I thought, that is the ego. When the ego is annihilated, the ultimate truth, the self, shines forth. In Upadesha Saram, Bhagavan makes it clear. Vrittayastu aham vritti masridaha vrittayo manah vidyaham manah. Further, Bhagavan specifies that the greatest tapas is the eradication of ego. Aham apedagam nija vibhanagam mahadidam tapo ramana vagiyam. The projection of the universe on the surface of the self is compared to the fleeting pictures on a cinema screen. The screen is the reality. The various events and scenes appearing on the screen do not affect the screen. Likewise, the self alone is there. The world and its activities have no reality as far as the self is concerned. They are like the dream visions. Bhagavan used to remind, the world as world is unreal, but the world as Brahman is real. Bhagavan used to compare the ego of the realized person to a cloth spread and burnt. The form of the cloth would be there, but it is of no use. It is reduced to ashes. The same is the case of ego of a jnana. It has only a seeming entity. On another occasion, Bhagavan observed that a jnani's mind is known only to the jnani. One must be a jnani oneself to understand another jnani. His words or actions or appearance are no indication of his greatness, for they are ordinarily beyond the comprehension of common people. However, the peace of mind which permeates the jnani's atmosphere is the only means by which a seeker understands the greatness of the jnani. The reality of the world was explained by Bhagavan's comparing it to the dream world. You create a dream body for yourself in the dream and act with that dream body. The same is falsified in the waking state. At present, you think that you are this body and not the dream body. In your dream, this body is falsified by the dream body. You see, neither of these bodies is real, because each of them is true for a time and false at other times. That which is real must be real forever. The I consciousness is present all through the three states of Jagrat, Swapna and Sushupti. There is no change in it. That alone is real. The three states are false. They are only for the mind. It is the mind which obstructs your vision of your true nature. Your true nature is that of infinite spirit. There was no mind in sleep, but it exists in the dream and waking states. The feeling of limitation is the work of the mind. If you search for the mind, it will vanish by itself, for it has no real existence. In Upadeshasaram, Bhagavan points to that. Aham ayam kuto bhavati chinnadaha ai padatyaham nija vicharana. Bhagavan summarized the self-enquiry in 3 words to a child. Naham, koham, soham. Naham means I am not this world. Koham, then who am I? Soham, I am the self. Bhagavan wrote very little. His real teaching is through silence and through his graceful look. In later years, he gave answers to the questions raised by devotees. They have been noted down, compiled and published in book form. During the period when Bhagavan was in Virupaksha cave, maintaining silence, he wrote out instructions for Gambiram Sheshaya, and they were published as a book under the title Self-Enquiry. Similarly, the replies given to Sivapragasham Pillai were published under the title Who Am I? The teachings of Bhagavan are available in the form of question and answers in talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi, recorded by Munagala Venkataramayya, and Day by Day with Bhagavan by Sri Devaraja Mudaliya. Upadeshasaram is a small work consisting of 30 slokas. It was in the form of instruction given by Lord Shiva to the sages. It was written at the request of the great poet devotee Murugana. Bhagavan himself wrote it in Tamil, Telugu, Sanskrit and Malayalam. It is an epitome of the various spiritual paths of sadhana, karma, bhakti, yoga and jnana, with a culmination of Bhagavan's direct path, the self-enquiry. In it, Bhagavan categorically mentions that the aim of various types of yogas is the peace while mind being merged in self at its birthplace, the heart. Kristale manassustada kriya bhakti yoga bodhascha nishchitam. The following verses is the Sanskrit rendering of Bhagavan's Ulladu Nalpadu by Lakshmana Sharma under the title Ramana Hridaya. The same was rendered into Sanskrit by Kavyaganta Ganapati Muni under the title Saddarshan. It contains the essence of Bhagavan's teachings. Sri Ramana Gita is a Sanskrit text containing 300 slokas dealing with questions on various topics by Kavyaganta and other devotees, and the answers given by Bhagavan. Gita Saram is the collection of 42 verses selected by Bhagavan from Bhagavad Gita on the request of a devotee. Most of the poems written by Bhagavan originated at the request of devotees on various occasions. They contain Bhakti and Jnana and are in the form of praise to Arunachala. Akshara Manamale was composed for the purpose of singing by Palaniswami and other devotees at the time of their stroll for Bhiksha. The perfection of knowledge is combined with ecstasy of devotion in this poem. Tears of ecstasy streamed down from the eyes of Bhagavan when he wrote these verses. It has become highly popular among devotees as a source of inspiration. Arunachala Panchakam, containing 5 hymns to Arunachala, was composed by Bhagavan in Sanskrit first and then translated into Tamil. Some poems containing instructions in the form of humor were also composed by Bhagavan, like the Appalappattu. Egatma Panchakam was the last poem written by Bhagavan in 1947, containing 5 verses on the self. Viveka Chudamani and Atma Bodha of Shankaracharya were rendered into Tamil by Bhagavan at the request of devotees. From 1947 onwards, the health of Bhagavan began to deteriorate. Rheumatism had affected his legs and shoulders. He was not yet 70 but looked more aged. Arthur Osborne gives a pen picture of the last days of Bhagavan in his biography. In 1949, a small nodule appeared below the elbow of his left arm. It was not taken seriously. The ashram doctor cut it out. Within a month, it reappeared larger and more painful. It was a malignant tumor and caused general alarm. Doctors came from Madras and operated. The wound did not heal properly and the tumor began to grow larger and higher up. When the tumor appeared again, doctors suggested amputation. As per tradition, a jnani's body should not be mutilated. Even operation was a breach of tradition. Bhagavan gave consent for that but refused amputation. He said, "There is no cause of alarm. The body itself is a disease. Let it have its natural end. Why mutilate it? Simple dressing of the part is enough," he suggested. About this time, Bhagavan translated a verse from Bhagavatam which says, "The body is the result of karma. Let it remain or die." The sage who has realized is not aware of it, just as a drunken man is not aware of his clothing. He quoted a sloga from Yoga Vasishta which also corroborates the same. Doctors were of opinion that the ailment would cause excruciating pain. Bhagavan asked, "Where is pain if there is no mind?" Of course, there will be physical reactions and normal sensitivity. But as his mind was absorbed in self, he did not feel pain as acutely as others do. The doctors were amazed at Sri Bhagavan's indifference to pain and his total unconcern during the operation. It was a case of sarcoma having terrific pain. Several times Bhagavan protested at the amount of attention given to his body. He said that no more treatment was required. He was exhausted after the radium treatment, but there was no sign of suffering in his face. He would say, "They take this body for Bhagavan and attribute suffering to him. What a pity." 4 operations were done, but there was no cure. The doctors admitted that the case was hopeless. Only palliatives could be given. No treatment is necessary. Let things take their course, was the stand taken by Bhagavan. Ayurveda, homeopathy, etc. were tried, but it was too late. Even in this condition, Bhagavan sat up to give darshan to devotees. He went through ashram correspondence and gave suggestions for printing the ashram publications. The tumor again appeared near the shoulder. The whole system was affected. Doctors came from Madras frequently to examine. Bhagavan's first question to them was whether they had food and whether they were well cared. His sense of humor still prevailed. He would joke about the tumor. Still prevailed. He would joke about the tumor as though it did not concern him. A woman in grief bet her head against the pillar near the room. Bhagavan's remark was, "Oh, I thought she was trying to break a coconut." He said to a doctor devotee, "The body is like a banana leaf on which all kinds of delicious food items have been served. After eating the food, do we preserve the leaf? Do we not throw it away as it has served the purpose? A jnani is anxious to throw off his body just as a headload worker to reach his destination to throw off his load and get relief." Bhagavan then corrected that a jnani is not even anxious to cast away his body. He is indifferent to the existence or non-existence of the body. On one occasion, Bhagavan defined moksha as getting rid of non-existent misery and attaining the bliss which is always there is moksha. A devotee pleaded, "Bhagavan, kindly give a thought of getting rid of this illness." "Who could have such thoughts?" was Bhagavan's reply. "There is no death for Bhagavan," he said categorically. "They say I am dying, but I am not going away. Where could I go? I am here." Bhagavan told the attendants to make him sit up. They knew that every touch would be painful. Bhagavan told them not to worry about that. The anxious devotees began to chant Arunachala Shiva. Bhagavan opened his eyes. Tears of bliss rolled down. One more breath and no more. There was no struggle, no spasm, no other sign of death. A French photographer came up and inquired about the time of the last breath. It was 8:47 p.m. Just then, he saw a big star trailing across the sky. It passed to the northeast towards the peak of Arunachala. Many had seen it as far as away as Madras. Came up and inquired about the time of the last breath. It was 8:47 p.m. Just then, he saw a big star trailing across the sky. It passed to the northeast towards the peak of Arunachala. Many had seen it as far away as Madras. Though the atmosphere was filled with grief, there was peace. The words of Bhagavan, I am here, has no limitations. It is universal. There is no going and coming for the self. The body was interred in a sitting posture, and a lingam of polished black stone was placed over the samadhi as a symbol of Lord Shiva. Lectures may entertain individuals for hours without improving them. Silence, on the other hand, is permanent and benefits the whole of mankind. Bhagavan's talks. There are many books containing the life and teachings of Bhagavan. Self-realization by B.V. Narasimha Swami. There are many books containing the life and teachings of Bhagavan. Self-realization by B.V. Narasimha Swami is the earliest biography of Bhagavan. Ramana Maharshi and the Path of Self-Knowledge by Arthur Osborne is a popular biography of Bhagavan containing the essence of his teachings. Another popular book is the Letters from Ramanashramam by Suri Nagamma. Reminiscences of the devotees like Kunjuswami, G.V. Subramaya, S.S. Cohen, A.W. Chadwick are also available at Ramanashramam. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala.